Baltimore Ravens ended up winning the AFC North last year and had the number one seed in the AFC until they lost at home in the divisional round to the Tennessee Titans. Has any of the other three teams managed to close the gap on the Baltimore Ravens? That is the subject of this segment, Chris. And look, I look at what the Ravens have done, and I think the real question is how much bigger have the Ravens made the gap between them and everyone else? They are not resting on their laurels, not that they ultimately were able to get a trophy last year, but they had great success, and they are not waiting for the other teams to catch them. When you look at what they've done this offseason, how they've tried to make their team better, I really do think the gap may be bigger, not smaller, between them and the other three teams.
Well, I mean, 100%. You know, I think we could sit here, and if you talk about, like, the teams who won the offseason in the NFL this year, the Baltimore Ravens are in the conversation for some of the things they did in free agency and the draft. They killed the draft, you know, and free agency to be able to sign Calais Campbell, you know, get back Jimmy Smith, keep Matt Judon. That was a huge signing. You know, it was, they franchised him. So they did a lot of good things just there as far as keeping their core together in Baltimore and adding Calais Campbell. But then you look at their draft and what they did there, you know, getting two middle linebackers in the first three rounds, getting a difference maker in J.K. Dobbins at running back, another defensive tackle, another receiver that, you know, in Duvernay from Texas that Lamar Jackson could throw to. So I'm with you, Mike. I mean, I think Baltimore is one of the teams I would sit here and go, they had the best offseason in all of football. So I'm not sure if anybody closed the gap. If there's any team in the division that closed the gap at all, to me, it would be the Cleveland Browns. They're another team that I think, like Baltimore, killed free agency and killed the draft as well to at least improve their football team.
And the Browns have yet another new head coach in Kevin Stefanski. I know that for some on this program, maybe both of us, there were questions about why Stefanski and why not Josh McDaniels instead, given that McDaniels would come from that Patriot way, would instill that Patriot way. But the Browns, look, they finally have gotten aligned under Paul DePodesta, and they've let him basically call the shots on the head coach and the GM. They've added some great players, signed Jack Conklin away from the Titans. He had a great year last season at right tackle, a guy who didn't have his option picked up, but then had a great contract year and left Tennessee. Signed tight end Austin Hooper away from the Atlanta Falcons. Used the 10th overall pick on Jedrick Wills to further beef up that offensive line that, you know, has still not fully recovered from the retirement of Joe Thomas. And when you look at what Nick Chubb did last year, almost winning the rushing title, it was a late push from Derrick Henry of the Titans that took it away from Chubb. What Baker Mayfield did as a rookie, what maybe he could do in year three if they can just get things stabilized. Chris, your guy OBJ had a video yesterday where he has boasted he's going to have one of his best seasons ever now that he's gotten himself healthy. We'll see. But, yeah, I think of the three teams, Steelers, Browns, Bengals, the Browns, and I don't know that this is good news for the Browns to not be off the radar screen. I feel like the more focus and attention that we put on the Browns, the harder it is for them to live up to the hype and the expectations. The hype isn't like it was last year, but I still think that maybe the team is better than it was last year.
I do too. I think it's, you know, it's more well-rounded. You know, last year it was a lot of, you know, sex appeal. Oh, you know, it's Olivier Vernon. We got him and Baker Mayfield and OBJ and Jarvis Landry, and we're going to be, you know, the greatest show on turf. And yeah, that, you know, listen, we're all excited about that, definitely. And the fact that Kareem Hunt's there and they kept him along with Nick Chubb. But the thing I would be the most excited about is what you talked about. What they did on really the offensive line, Jack Conklin, and then to get Jedrick Wills in the top 10 of the draft. So now you have two franchise tackles to go with, you know, a pretty good interior offensive line, Mike. And let's not forget, Nick Chubb was, you know, did he lead the league in rushing last year? So they can run block a little.
No, Derrick Henry caught him did in the last week. Yeah.
That's right. I forgot. Right. So, you know, there's a lot to like there. And then one of the issues, you know, you looked at on their defensive side of the ball last year, we know they have some, you know, athletic studs on the edge of the defense, but to sign an Adrian Claiborne and an Andrew Billings, and then a few guys in the secondary too, just to kind of round out that defense to help out the safety position, give them some bigger bodies, you know, make the run defense better. Yeah, I like what Cleveland did this offseason. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the Stefanski hiring, but Mike, you and I will be the first one to sit here if they start tearing it up to go look at him. He did a great job, and I'm rooting for him. It's nothing personal. It's certainly not, but I like what Cleveland's done, and I think they're heading in the right direction. There's no doubt.
The Bengals got quarterback Joe Burrow number 1 overall. Andy Dalton was cut last week, so they go with Burrow. They bring in receiver T. Higgins in round 2. Franchise tag applied to A.J. Green. Joe Mixon still there, entering the 4th year of his career, and has been not spectacular, but I guess given the constraints of the Bengals offense, he's been better than average, much better than average, really. David Carr, who went through the early stages of a career with the Texans without having much help on the offensive line, he recently expressed, an opinion that, hey, Joe Burrow is in for a long rookie season if they don't improve the offensive line. I think that's the real question in Cincinnati. Do they have enough protection to let Burrow do all those great things that he did at LSU, Chris?
Yeah, well, there's two things there. Let's not forget their first-round pick from Alabama. He'll be back in the lineup next year at tackle. He didn't get
unless
to play
he gets
last
injured
year.
again.
Well, unless he gets injured
that's
again.
The thing. It's funny how all the guys who come back from injury, we just assume they're going to play 16 games. I'd love to see the stats on that. But if he's healthy, that'll help.
Right. Well, I mean, it's certainly going to be an upgrade to what they had in a holes filled. The greatest thing about Joe Burrow, Mike, that we talked about during the draft, Burrow's amazing under pressure. That's one of the positive things about him. And you mentioned, Joe Mixon. I would think there's going to be real emphasis on getting that run game going. He's a special running back. That falls under the guideline of, hey, it's a team sport, and it stinks because you could be one of the best at your position in a sport, and if nobody's opening up holes for you or doing anything to help you, we don't know about it, and that's what stinks. But they do have A.J. Green back, made some adjustments to their secondary. Thought they got a great defensive tackle in DJ Reader from the Texans. I thought that was a huge pickup for their football team. But the Bengals they're heading in the right direction, no doubt. I mean, hey, listen, I'm a huge fan of Joe Burrow, and I think that T. Higgins second-round pick is going to fit real nicely with his style of play too. So they're trending upward. There's no doubt about that. It's just going to be a big year for Zach Taylor, getting Joe Burrow caught up in this offense and get everything going that way.
Joe Mixon quietly had 1,137 rushing yards last year, which actually ended up being 2 more yards than Dalvin Cook. Now, Cook missed a couple of games due to injury late in the season. I think one was more, let's just protect him, the Hayes in the barn on our playoff berth. But still, he had more rushing yards than Dalvin Cook with a team that was a far cry from the Minnesota Vikings. So, Mixon may explode to the extent that there is a threat in the passing game that pushes that extra safety out of the box, gives Joe Mixon maybe a better running lane, but it is going to come down, Chris, to the offensive line. Can Jonah Williams be healthy? Can the rest of the offensive line do what it needs to do? And we haven't mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, if they have Ben Roethlisberger back healthy all year long, which could be a big if, given that he exited week 2 with a season-ending elbow injury, but they've brought in Chase Claypool to beef up the receiving core. They've added Anthony McFarland Jr. to help out with a multi-headed running attack that still can't quite replace Le'Veon Bell. Their defense got really good last year. The Steelers could be a team that kind of quietly gives the Ravens a run for their money. And we know the history in Pittsburgh. We know the Mike Tomlin coaching. We know everything about Pittsburgh. They are not going to just give up. They are not going to just go 6-10 and concede anything to anyone. They're going to be in the thick of things.
No, exactly. I mean, we're not trying to disrespect the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think, we almost glossed them over because we just go, they're going to be good. They're going to be really competitive. They have a Super Bowl type defense. I mean, come on. What they did last year, the last half of the year, the last 10 games of the year, that was amazing. I mean, they knew that they were going to have to come out and hold teams to 13, 16 points, or they couldn't win games, and they did that. So, first off, them keeping Bud Dupree, through the franchise tag was huge for their football team. It was. But this team, in a lot of ways, like you mentioned, is built and ready to go. Yeah, they had a few guys in free agency. Eric Ebron at tight end. That'll be a nice match with Ben Roethlisberger, Chase Claypool, and, again, some young receivers that I think are going to open up some eyes with everybody this year with Deontay Johnson and I think James Washington, he'll be a year better and all that. So I certainly am not trying to disrespect the Steelers. I don't think you are either. I think we both look at them and go, we think they're going to be a major player in the AFC playoff conversation.
They got a lot of fairly high-round picks at receiver in Pittsburgh now. Let's see if those guys step up. We know Juju Smith-Schuster can. We're gonna look and see what Chase Claypool can do. But when you've got Deontay Johnson, who's yet to really get it done, James Washington yet to prove he can do it on a high level, we're going to learn a lot about the Steelers receivers this year.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.